When the skies of the Odit homeworld lit up with the fiery colors of plasma from the Krazak Armada, their species' first response was failed diplomatic appeasement, disastrously followed by a desperate military stand that collapsed within hours. Now, the surviving millions endured only thanks to the countless bunkers left over from an old war. But time was running out as the Krazak prepared to deploy massive world diggers to crack open their hiding places. Failai, the only ambassador to survive the sudden assault from space, stood in front of an old comms station, reaching out to every ally he could name, clinging to the hope that the Odit had nurtured enough friendships not to be abandoned in their darkest hour. But so far, the answers he had received were far from encouraging.
"And you must understand, Ambassador Failai,"
Sobar's yellow scales gleamed bright even through the screen.
"the Krazaks have positioned 3 battle groups between our systems. Any relief force we send would be intercepted long before it reached Audit space."
Failai's blue hands tightened on the edges of the communication console, his eyes fixed on the face of the one he had considered, until minutes ago, his only reptilian friend.
"Soba, please. We've traded with your people for 3 centuries. Our medical supplies have saved millions of your hatchlings from scale rot." Yes, and we are eternally grateful,"
Sobar interrupted, his vertical pupils narrowing to thin slits.
"But gratitude does not translate into suicide missions. The Council of Thags has spoken. We cannot risk war with the Krazak, not when our own borders are threatened. You understand the political situation, surely?" "I understand that we're dying,"
Failai said. Through the screen, he saw Sobar's tail swish behind him, a gesture of finality among his kind.
"I am truly sorry, old friend. May your ancestors guide you through this darkness, but we cannot help."
The ambassador paused, then added with hollow formality,
"The Scaled Republic wishes the Audit people strength in these trying times."
The connection terminated, leaving Failai staring at a blank screen. Failai remained frozen in front of the flat screen as Sobar's image faded into darkness. The bunker's communications center felt suddenly smaller, its outdated technology an annoying reminder of their dire situation in bunkers built 200 years ago during the Continental Wars. He turned slowly to face Vizay, his assistant in this time of crisis, and their eyes met in shared understanding. The orange irises that marked their species were now ringed with deep red, the chromatic display of absolute despair that their kind couldn't hide even if they wanted to. It was one of the cruel jokes of their evolution. While other species could mask their emotions behind static faces or controlled body language, the Audit wore their feelings in rings of color around their eyes for all to see.
"That's the 4th rejection today,"
Vizay said quietly, her blue-tinted skin looking almost gray under the harsh lighting. She stood beside a tactical display showing the tactical map of the surface, her slender frame rigid with tension. Failai nodded, his own blue skin flushed darker. Despite being prominent members of the bipedal faction of the Galactic Council and the oxygen-breathing sub-branches nonetheless, they found themselves facing one denial after another in their requests for help. The Tarathi had cited trade disputes that were 15 years old. The Zeor claimed their fleets were undergoing maintenance. The Garathi simply hadn't responded at all, though Failai suspected their communications were being received and deliberately ignored. Each rejection felt like another nail in their species' coffin, another moment closer to extinction.
"We need to try someone else,"
Vizay said, her fingers moving across her datapad.
"Perhaps a species that looks more like us. 2 eyes, skin rather than scales."
Failai shook his head, exhaustion evident in every movement. His shoulders sagged, and the ceremonial ambassador's sash he still wore out of habit seemed to weigh him down like chains.
"Which warrior species has anything similar to us and is actually on our list of friends? The bipedal oxygen breathers who aren't reptilian are either too far away or too weak to help. The Zorg coalition would take months to mobilize, and the Inner Spiral Alliance doesn't have the military strength to challenge a Krazak breakfast patrol, let alone their invasion fleet.
Vizai opened her mouth to respond when a massive explosion rocked the surface above them. The bunker shook violently, dust cascading from ancient ceiling joints that groaned under the stress. Several screens flashed warning signals as seismic sensors went wild, their displays painting a picture of devastation that was becoming all too familiar. She grabbed the edge of a console to steady herself, her knuckles changing color with the pressure, then quickly recomposed, her professional mask sliding back into place even as the red ring around her eyes deepened to an almost burgundy shade.
"The Gassat," she said. "They're warm-blooded, blue-skinned like us. They could—"
Phylai actually laughed, a bitter, broken sound that seemed to startle even him.
"The Gassat! They hate us! Our friendship ended long before the invasion. They haven't responded to our communications in 5 years, and it wasn't for lack of trying on our part."
Vizai was quiet for just a second, her mind racing through their dwindling options like a computer. Her emotional ring flickered through several colors, purple for thought, yellow for inspiration, then settling on a determined green. Then, with sudden conviction that made Phylai look up,
"The humans!"
Phylai's orange eyes widened, the red ring flickering with surprise and disbelief.
"The humans? They don't have blue skin,"
Vizai admitted quickly, words tumbling over each other in her urgency.
"Nor do they express their emotions through color rings around their eyes. But they have a reputation for being unmatched in spatial warfare. They've fought wars over practically nothing. Trade routes, colonization rights, even cultural misunderstandings. They once went to war because of the life of a single old human. They might—" "The humans!"
Phylai repeated, incredulous, rising from his chair.
"Vizai, our species ambassadors have had virtually no contact with the Earthborns. The only interaction I can recall was at that cultural exchange event 20 years ago where I ended up petting one of their furry companions. What did they call it? A dog? The interaction seemed to make them happy somehow, but that's hardly the foundation for a military alliance. They're unpredictable, violent, and we share almost nothing in common with them. They don't even have proper chromatic emotional displays. How can you trust a species that can lie with their very appearance?"
Another explosion, closer this time, sent vibrations through the floor that Phylai could feel in his bones. Vizai ignored the explosion and moved closer to him, her voice urgent.
"That's exactly why we should contact them, sir. Think about it. Humans have a history of picking fights with other species for the smallest provocations, and our relationship being distant, that's not necessarily bad. It means there's no history of broken deals between us, no unpaid debts, no tariffs they're angry about, no trade disputes festering over decades. Can you say the same about any other species on our contact list?"
Phylai stared at the tactical display showing the world diggers warming up their plasma cores, each mechanical monster getting ready to dig them out of the bunkers. They had perhaps a day before the first one broke through to the upper bunker levels. After that, it would be a massacre. Civilians torn apart by Krazak soldiers who viewed mercy as weakness. Children who would never see another sunrise. Families separated in the chaos, dying alone in the dark. The logic was insane, but then again, watching his world burn while their supposed allies made excuses was its own kind of insanity. At least with the humans, they'd be rolling dice with an unknown species rather than accepting certain death. And there was something to be said for desperation. It clarified priorities wonderfully.
"Fine,"
he said finally, his fingers already moving to make the call.
"I'll try our luck with humans. But when they either ignore us or send condolences instead of ships, remember, this was your idea."
Vizai said nothing, just moved to stand beside him as he initiated the FTL communication. The screen flickered through various connection nodes, bouncing their signal across relay stations light years apart. The process of contacting Earth over FTL comms was always slightly surreal, watching data packets race through cosmic infrastructure that no single species fully understood anymore, legacy systems built by civilizations that had transcended or died out millennia ago. Finally, the screen stabilized on an image of Earth, that blue-white marble that had produced one of the galaxy's most paradoxical species. Beneath it, a single word blinked in galactic standard. Waiting. The seconds stretched like hours. Phylae could hear his own heartbeat, could see the red ring around Visai's eyes showing her anxiety. Then the image on the screen suddenly changed, revealing a human woman with brown hair pulled back in what they called a ponytail. She was sitting in what appeared to be a mundane office, complete with what looked like a motivational poster featuring a cat hanging from a tree branch.
Good morning, or
she glanced at something off-screen.
Whatever time it is for you. This is Susan Novak with Earth's Extraterrestrial Affairs Department. Thank you for contacting Earth. How may I direct your call today?
The cheerful, almost telemarketing tone was so incongruous with their situation that Phylae almost couldn't speak. His mouth opened and closed several times, no sound emerging. Visai stepped in smoothly, her naturally diplomatic personality taking over.
This is Assistant Ambassador Visai of the Audit Democratic Republic. We are requesting immediate military assistance. Our homeworld is under invasion by the Krazak Empire. This is not a trade dispute or a border skirmish. This is an extinction-level attack.
Susan's expression shifted slightly, becoming more focused. The customer service smile replaced by genuine attention.
I see. And you said the Audit Democratic Republic? One moment, please.
Her fingers reached for something outside the frame, presumably a keyboard. Phylae could hear the rapid clicking, strangely primitive.
Ah, yes. I have you in our system. May I speak with the ranking diplomatic officer?
That would be me,
Phylae managed, finding his voice through sheer force of will.
I'm Ambassador Phylae. Our situation is extremely urgent. The Krazak launched a surprise attack 3 days ago. Our defense forces have been eliminated. Our orbital stations are debris. Our cities are burning. The surviving population has retreated to underground bunkers, but the Krazak are deploying world diggers to
excavate us,
Visai interrupted.
They're going to crack our bunkers open and slaughter everyone inside. Millions of civilians, children, elderly. We've contacted every ally we have, but...
Her voice failed her.
But everyone has refused,
Phylae finished for her.
We are alone, human, and we are running out of time. The world diggers are already...
Wait,
Susan interrupted, her head tilting slightly. A smile spread across her face, that peculiar human expression that could mean so many things, from joy to predatory anticipation.
You're the blue folks who weren't afraid of dogs, from the cultural exchange 20 years ago. Oh my gosh, you're the ambassador who gave Colonel Johnson's German Shepherd belly rubs. We have a photo of that in our break room. It's literally famous.
Phylae blinked, his emotional ring flickering between red despair and purple confusion so rapidly it created a strobe effect.
Yes, but...
The audit, that was you?
Susan continued, her smile widening to show more teeth, something that should have been threatening but somehow wasn't.
So what exactly do you need from Earth?
Phylae and Visai exchanged a quick glance, years of knowing each other allowing them to communicate without words, then said in perfect unison,
Send us anything! We're getting slaughtered!
They looked at each other in surprise at their synchronization, the red rings around their eyes flickering embarrassment at their obvious desperation. It was undignified, undiplomatic, and absolutely honest. Susan, meanwhile, just smiled wider, and there was something in that smile that spoke of decisions already made.
Let me see what I can do,
she said, then muted her microphone. They could see her turning to speak to someone off-screen, her hands gesturing animatedly. Another human appeared partially in frame, a man in what looked like a military uniform with enough decorations to armor a small vehicle. There was a rapid conversation, Susan pointing at her screen several times, the man's eyebrows rising higher with each gesture. At one point, he actually laughed, slapping his hand on something off-screen. More humans appeared in the background, a growing cluster. Susan pulled up what looked like files on another screen. The uniformed man made a call on what appeared to be an extremely secure phone, his face serious. Phylae could see him nodding, then his eyes widening, then nodding again more vigorously. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 2 minutes, Susan unmuted.
I'll need your exact coordinates, spatial position, and local system markers. Help will be there in 30 minutes via hyperjump.
30 minutes?
Phylae couldn't hide his shock.
But the nearest human military base is in the Sagittarius arm. That's weeks away, even with...
30 minutes,
Susan repeated firmly, with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what resources were being deployed.
There will be a stealth ship arriving at your bunker entrance. I need you to be there to meet them. Humanity still needs to ask a few questions before we start, quote, blowing things up. Can you get to the surface safely?
Vizai was already pulling up bunker schematics on her datapad.
The north auxiliary exit is still clear. The Krazak are focusing on the main entrances, but 30 minutes? What could you possibly... Trust me,
Susan said, and there was something in her tone that made both Audit pay attention, something that suggested powers beyond their comprehension were being set in motion.
Or trust humanity, at least. 30 minutes, north auxiliary exit. Be there.
The connection terminated, leaving them staring at each other in bewilderment.
Can we trust them?
Vizai asked quietly, already moving toward the equipment lockers.
This seems...
insane?
Phylae supplied, following her.
Impossible? Too good to be true?
He looked at the tactical display where the world diggers were now glowing with plasma charge, their drill tips beginning to spin with ominous purpose.
Can we even survive outside the bunker long enough to beat them?
The emergency suits can handle the radiation for an hour,
Vizai said, already pulling one on, checking the seals.
As for the Krazak, we'll have to risk it. It's either that or wait here to die.
Phylae nodded slowly, pulling on his own emergency suit, the fabric configuring itself to his body.
You realize we're betting our lives on a species whose main qualification is that I petted their dog 20 years ago?
Well,
Vizai said, sealing her helmet with a long hiss of pressurization.
Given that our actual allies have abandoned us, I'd say those humans are our best option.
The journey to the surface was harrowing. They passed through sections of the bunker that had already been damaged by the bombardment, corridors where the lights flickered or had failed entirely. When they reached the surface, they found a hellscape. What had once been Audit's capital city was now a smoking ruin, buildings reduced to twisted metal and melted glass. The sky burned orange with fires and the residual energy of orbital bombardments. As time passed, Phylae and Vizai crouched behind the twisted remains of what had been a memorial statue, ironically a monument to peace and galactic cooperation.
This was a terrible idea,
Phylae muttered, watching his chronometer.
We're going to die out here waiting for humans who probably...
A shimmer in the air made him stop mid-sentence. Where there had been nothing but empty space, a small craft suddenly materialized, though small was being generous. It was barely larger than a civilian transport, its hull a matte black that seemed to absorb all light. It looked fragile, almost delicate. If this was Earth's idea of military assistance, they were doomed. A hatch hissed open on its side, and a single human stepped out. He was wearing what looked like a flight suit. No armor, no visible weapons. He raised a hand in what Phylae recognized as a greeting gesture, casual, as if they were meeting for coffee rather than in the middle of an apocalypse. Ambassador Phylae, Assistant Vizai. The human's voice came through their helmet comms, casual and relaxed despite the hellscape around them. I'm Oliver. Your ride's here. They approached cautiously, Phylae unable to hide his dismay as he took in the tiny vessel.
This is what Earth sent? This single small craft?
Oliver grinned, that human expression that showed teeth but somehow meant friendliness rather than aggression. Oh, this? Nah, this is just the shuttle. Come on aboard. We need to get moving. The light show's about to start, and trust me, you want a good seat for this. The interior was as minimalist as the exterior. Basic seats, simple controls, no visible weapon systems. It looked more like a tourist shuttle than anything military. Oliver dropped into the pilot's seat, and the ship lifted off smoothly, accelerating with surprising speed. "So," Oliver said conversationally as they cleared the ruins, banking sharply to avoid a chunk of falling debris from the orbital bombardment. "You two been together long? It's really sweet that you're facing the end of the world together. Very romantic, like something out of a tragedy, except hopefully with a better ending." Vizai's emotional ring flared purple with embarrassment, visible even through her helmet's visor.
We're not. We're colleagues, professional partners. We work together.
"Really?" Oliver glanced back, seemingly genuinely surprised. "Huh, the way the brief described you, well, anyway, you asked for help and help has arrived. Boy, has it arrived."
This ship?
Phalai couldn't keep the desperation out of his voice.
I mean no disrespect, but the Krazak have an entire invasion fleet. What can one small...
Oliver burst out laughing, actually slapping his knee, a gesture that made both Audit flinch in confusion. "Oh, man, you think? No. This isn't the help. This is just me picking you up so you can see the help. Trust me, Ambassador. When humans decide to make a statement, we don't do it halfway. We go big or we go home, and in this case, we went bigger than big. We went astronomical." They broke atmosphere, the shuttle's walls becoming transparent to reveal the space around Audit. The Krazak fleet hung in orbit like a swarm of metal predators, hundreds of ships ranging from fighters to massive dreadnoughts. The sight made Phalai's heart sink further. Even if Earth had sent a fleet, how could they stand against such numbers? "There," Oliver said, pointing toward the edge of the system. "Right on schedule. You might want to hold on to something." At first, Phalai saw nothing. Then space itself seemed to tear open, reality bending in ways that made his eyes water and his brain reject what he was seeing. The fabric of the universe pulled apart like curtains, revealing something that shouldn't exist. What emerged from that hyperspatial rift defied immediate comprehension. It was a sphere the size of a small moon, but that was where any comparison to natural celestial bodies ended. The core seemed almost alive, contained within layers of strange matter that shifted between states of existence: solid, liquid, plasma, and something else that had no name because it shouldn't exist in normal space-time. Around this impossible core, 3 rings rotated at different angles and speeds, each one the width of a continent. "Ambassador Phalai, Assistant Vizai," Oliver said formally, his casual demeanor replaced by something approaching reverence. "Allow me to introduce you to the Few-E Finality, though we just call her the Star Destroyer. First of her class, hopefully the last. She was designed as a deterrent, really, the weapon you build so you never have to use it. Turns out the engineering team got a bit enthusiastic. She can crack a planet in half at a fraction of full power, or perform surgical strikes with the secondary weapons. She's no simple weapon. She's a fundamental argument against the concept of warfare itself." Phalai couldn't speak. Beside him, Vizai was making small sounds that might have been words in some language, but weren't forming anything coherent. The Star Destroyer was impossible. It was too big, too powerful, too everything. It was the kind of weapon that civilizations whispered about but never built, because the mere existence of such a thing would destabilize entire galaxies. "Here's the thing," Oliver continued, guiding the shuttle toward a docking bay that was opening in one of the rings. "When Susan called up the chain of command with your request, it went all the way to the top, the president himself. And you know what he said? He said, 'The dog-petting couple needs help. Send the big gun.' Well, you're not actually a couple, but the point stands. Nobody else was going to help you, so we decided to make sure everyone in the galaxy knows that Earth takes care of our distant friends." The docking bay was larger than most cities, and it was just one of dozens visible along the ring's surface. As their shuttle settled onto the deck, Phalai could see hundreds of humans moving around, welcoming them as they left the tiny stealth ship. As they walked through the corridors toward what Oliver called the second bridge, every human they passed smiled at them. The first few offered waves and cheerful greetings.
Hey, it's the puppy-petting couple. Welcome aboard. Glad you made it. Don't worry, we've got this handled.
The captain's eager to meet you both. Says any couple that's brave enough to pet strange dogs is worth saving a planet for. About time someone stood up to the Krazak, and for such a good cause, protecting the dog petters. Each time, Phylae or Vizai would try to correct the misconception about their relationship, but the humans just smiled and moved on, apparently locked into their narrative. It was surreal, walking through this impossible weapon while being congratulated for a 20-year-old interaction with a pet. The bridge, when they finally reached it, was a sphere within a sphere, suspended in null gravity with displays that covered every surface. Information flowed across the screens in strange patterns, data streams interweaving like living things. In the center, standing on a platform that defied orientation, was a human man with graying hair and sharp eyes. He turned as they entered, a slight smile on his face.
Ambassador Phylae, Assistant Vizai. I'm Captain Jeffrey Smith. Welcome aboard humanity's worst-kept secret and biggest stick.
He gestured to the displays around them, showing the Krazak fleet in painful detail. Every ship was catalogued, their weapons analyzed, their shield frequencies mapped.
Now, let's discuss how we're going to handle this situation.
Captain,
Phylae began, trying to remember his old diplomatic training even as his mind reeled from the impossibility of where he stood.
we are grateful for your assistance, but perhaps we should attempt communication with the Krazak first. If they see your vessel, they might...
Oh, they see us, Captain Smith said calmly. They've been sending increasingly panicked signals since we arrived. I'm ignoring them for now. Let them sweat a bit. Fear is a wonderful negotiating tool, and they've had 3 days to terrorize your people. A few minutes of return favor seems fair.
But surely a show of force combined with diplomacy...
Vizai started.
Would be the reasonable approach, yes, the captain agreed. But here's the thing about humans, and I want you to understand this. We don't do reasonable when someone attacks another species' homeworld for no reason, even when that world belongs to friends whose only qualification is being kind to our pets. He turned to his crew. Navigation, set course for the Krazak home system.
Captain?
Phylae's voice cracked.
Did you say their home system?
That's right. Smith's smile was different now, harder, with an edge that reminded Phylae that humans were, despite their often cheerful demeanor, apex predators who had clawed their way to the top of their food chain through violence and cunning.
We're not going to fight them here. Too much collateral damage to your world. No, we're going to visit their home, have a little chat, make sure they understand the consequences of their actions.
But that's 3 days' travel at least,
Vizai protested.
For normal ships, sure,
Smith nodded to his navigation officer.
For us, about 6 minutes. Initiate jump.
The sensation of the Star Destroyer entering hyperspace was unlike anything Phylae had experienced. Normal ships punched through space-time like a needle through fabric. This thing tore reality apart like a bullet. He felt his consciousness flutter, experiencing moments out of sequence, seeing their arrival before their departure, feeling the echo of decisions not yet made. And then suddenly they were elsewhere. The displays showed a different system. 8 planets orbiting a big star. The 4th planet was clearly inhabited, its night side glowing with city lights, orbital stations glittering like jewels. And around it, stationed in defensive formations, was the Krazak home fleet. Not a raiding force like at Audit, but their actual military might. Thousands of ships. They were all turning to face the Star Destroyer, like prey suddenly realizing a predator had entered their territory.
Sir?
The communications officer said, her voice professionally calm despite the situation.
We're receiving multiple signals from the Krazak. They're confused, sir. They want to know why we're here. They're also asking what we are, because their sensors can't properly classify the Star Destroyer. Apparently, we're reading as a black hole.
Ignore them for now, Smith calmly studied the displays. Weapons, target the 7th planet, the frozen one at the edge of the system. 1% power on the main gun.
Captain,
Phylae said urgently.
Perhaps we should...
Fire!
The crew carried out the order in seconds. The Star Destroyer glowed like a star. The rings aligned for a fraction of a second, creating a strange geometric configuration that seemed to make space itself hold its breath. And then a beam of something that wasn't quite energy and wasn't quite matter launched out across space. In a few seconds, it struck the frozen planet, a world probably the size of Earth's Neptune, a massive ball of ice and frozen gases that had circled these stars for billions of years. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the planet melted, but not all at once. Massive fissures split across its surface, exposing a molten core that should have frozen solid eons ago. Knowing it was uninhabited did little to diminish the awe the sight inspired. The bridge was silent for a moment. Phylae and Visai stood frozen, their emotional rings cycling through colors so quickly they appeared white, the chromatic equivalent of a system crash. "Communications," Captain Smith said calmly, as if he hadn't just casually destroyed a world. "Open a channel to the Krazakh home fleet." The main display shifted to show a Krazakh commander, a being that looked like someone had crossed a mantis with a nightmare and given it too many eyes. All of those eyes went wide with what Phylae assumed was shock. "This is Earth speaking," Smith began conversationally. "I'm here regarding your invasion of the Audit homeworld. You're going to withdraw immediately. You're going to pay reparations, and you're going to sign a non-aggression pact. Or I'm going to demonstrate what happens at 2% power. Your home planet looks lovely, by the way." The Krazakh commander's mandibles clicked frantically.
But the Audit are not. Humans have no treaty with. Why are you...
"They pet our dogs," Smith said simply. 20 years ago, at a cultural exchange, Ambassador Phylae here pet Colonel Johnson's German Shepherd. Made the dog's whole day.
You're threatening to destroy our world because of a pet interaction 2 decades ago?
We also have a policy against slathering sapients, but yes, Smith's tone suggested that this was the most reasonable thing in the universe. You have an hour to begin withdrawal from Audit space. The Krazakh commander turned to someone off-screen, clicking and chittering rapidly. Then back to the screen.
We agree to your terms. Withdrawal begins immediately. But this is insane. The Galactic Council will hear of this.
"It was just an empty space rock. They will forgive us," Smith said cheerfully. The connection ended. Smith turned to Phylae and Visai, who were still processing what they'd just witnessed.
That's it?
Visai managed.
You just threatened them and they're leaving?
"Well, I also destroyed a planet," Smith pointed out. "That tends to make an impression. The Krazakh are bullies. They attack those they see as weak and alone, but they're not stupid." Phylae found his voice.
Captain, we can't thank you enough. You saved our entire species. I don't know how we can ever repay...
"Pet more dogs," Smith said seriously, "and maybe get married. You two make a cute couple."
We're not a couple,
they said in unison, their emotional rings flaring purple. Smith laughed. "Well, maybe you should think about it. Post-war reconstruction is usually a good time for, plus shared trauma, facing death together, being saved by an impossibly powerful alien weapon. That's romantic comedy material right there." The displays showed the Krazakh fleet beginning to move, their ships pulling back from Audit. It was really happening. They were leaving. The invasion was over. Phylae looked at Visai, seeing her in a slightly different light. They'd worked together for years, traveled the galaxy, and now faced the end of the world side by side. The red rings of despair around their eyes were fading, replaced by swirls of purple embarrassment and something else, a soft pink that was hard for him to decipher.
"Perhaps," Visai said quietly, "we should get a dog."
Captain Smith laughed again. "Now you're talking. We'll send you a whole breeding pair. German Shepherds, since they're historically lucky for you. Consider it a gift from Earth to Audit. After all," he looked at the displays showing the Krazakh's hasty retreat, "what are friends for?" As the Star Destroyer began its journey back to Audit, ready to oversee the Krazakh withdrawal and help with reconstruction, Phylae couldn't help but marvel at the absurdity of it all. They'd called for help expecting nothing, and received a weapon that could destroy stars.
You know,
He said to Visai as they stood watching the stars streak by.
the humans are completely insane.
Yes,
She agreed, the pink in her emotional ring deepening.
good thing they are kind of insane.
In the end, it had taken less than 2 hours from their desperate plea to the complete withdrawal of the Krazak. The story would spread across the galaxy within days, how humanity sent a star destroyer to save the alien dog-petting couple, even if they weren't actually a couple.